Welcome to part 5 of our lecture on the peripheral nervous system. In this lecture, we'll look at the nerve plexuses, mainly the brachial plexus. Before we go to the brachial plexus, we're going to start with the cervical plexus. The main nerve roots are the anterior rami of C1, C2, C3, and C4. However, a little bit of the hypoglossal nerve comes down right here, and a little bit of C5 actually goes, hey, wait for me. So in reality, we have the hypoglossal nerve, C1, C2, C3, C4, and C5, forming structures of the cervical plexus. Now we're only worried about one nerve, and it's this guy right here. It's branches of C3, 4, and C5, and it's called the phrenic nerve. This nerve goes to the diaphragm. So if you sever the spine right here before C3, you don't have innervation to C4, C5, and C3. So no diaphragm, the person dies. So again, the cervical plexus is the hypoglossal and C1 through 5. And C3 to C5 give rise to the phrenic nerve, which goes to the diaphragm. That will be one of the nerves on the peripheral nerve assignment. This is the brachial plexus. It goes to the upper limbs, which are the arms. It is formed from the anterior rami of spinal nerves C5 to T1. So again, C5 cheats and doubles up. Half of this and all the plexes go from a root, which is actually a branch of the rami, not the spinal roots, a trunk, a division, a cord, then the terminal branches. And a way to remember this, rad teenagers do cool belly flops. So, rad teenagers do cool belly flops is how you would remember it. The brachial plexus and all plexuses start with roots. These are different from the spinal roots. These roots branch off of the anterior rami. And the roots are C5, C6, C7, C8, and T1. 5 comes superior, C6 is superior, C7 is superior, C8 is inferior, T1 is inferior. Now, plexus means weave. So C5 and C6 are going to weave together to form something called the superior cord. So the roots of the anterior rami of C5 and C6 are going to come together and form the superior trunk. So here's the superior trunk. Now the cords of C8 and T1, the roots of C8 and T1, will come together and form the inferior trunk. 7's a snob right now. It's going to come off and become the middle trunk. So again, you have roots coming off the anterior rami. The root of C5 and C6 are going to form the superior trunk. C7 is going to form the middle trunk. C8 and T1 form the inferior trunk. And remember, these are named for the spinal nerves. So C5 comes off superior, C6 is superior, C7 is superior. C8 is inferior to C7. Remember, that's the tricky one. T1 is inferior to the vertebra. However, this is actually very straightforward when you see it. You have a superior, middle, and inferior trunk. What all the pictures don't make real clear is that all three of these trunks have a little thing that's in it, and it goes towards the back of the body. So it goes towards the back of the shoulder. And this is going to form the posterior division. And what's on top of it is the anterior division. So part of this nerve and part of this nerve are actually going to come together and form part of the anterior division. So see how that is on top of the posterior branches underneath? Off of the inferior trunk, there's also an anterior division coming off. Let's look at our weave so far. C5 and C6 are roots off the anterior rami of those nerves, and they're going to come together and form the superior trunk right there. C7 comes superior to vertebra C7, is a snob and stays by itself. Then C8 and T1 are going to get together and form the inferior trunk. Now C7 finally sees, oh, this is fun. I'm going to take the hands of the superior trunk and inferior trunk and form the posterior cord. But it's like, you know what? I'm going to have a secret friendship with that one. So there's also a branch that hooks up on top or anteriorly. Now the inferior trunk, not to be outdone, has an anterior division too. So far we have this posterior division right here and two anterior divisions that come off the three trunks. The posterior division is going to continue as the posterior cord. Now that these two have hooked up, they're going to actually continue as the lateral cord. And that's because what the pictures aren't really showing very well is that this is now going towards the lateral side of the humerus, where this is trying to sneak behind the humerus. And then the anterior, if that's lateral, is going, this anterior division is going to become the medial cord. So these cords are going to weave one more time into terminal nerves. So we're going to start with this posterior cord right here. It's going to continue on its merry way, and it's going to form the radial nerve. Now there's a little branch that comes off here. So this is about the armpit right there, and that is called the axillary nerve. Two nerves that come off of the posterior cord are the radial and axillary. C4 is actually secretly in love with T2. So they're going to have a branch that comes off together and hook up together. So this nerve will be the median nerve. So the lateral cord and medial cord are going to hook up and become the median. Now the radial nerve is going to go obviously along the radius. This is on the anterior side of the arm, basically going down the middle of the forearm. That's why it's called median. Now there's a very thin branch that's coming off the lateral cord, and it's not going to go very far. It actually hangs out and stops, and it innervates only the biceps brachii and the brachialis and the skin around the brachial region. So because it goes to muscles, musculo, because it goes to the skin, cutaneous. So that's a very thin nerve, where the radial and the median are pretty thick. So wait, we have radial side, middle. What's the other arm, bone in the arm? Oh yeah, the ulna. So we must have an ulnar nerve coming off right here. And this is actually going to go underneath your elbow to get to your ulnar side. Wait, what's there? Oh, that's your funny bone is actually your ulnar nerve. In review, the nerves of roots of C5 and C6 are going to form the superior trunk. On this, you can see the dorsal root ganglia is right there. That's the anterior root. So it's not the roots of the spine. It's the roots coming off the anterior rami. It's a weird naming system. So this is the middle cord, middle trunk. So you can see the dorsal root ganglia back there. So these are the spinal roots. So this is a root coming off of the anterior rami. It's really weird. So C7, that nerve root gives rise to the middle trunk. T1 right here and C8 are going to give rise to the inferior trunk. So each trunk is going to give rise to a posterior division. 1, 2, and 3. And the posterior division becomes the posterior cord. Now, part of the middle trunk is also going to go up and hook up with part of the superior trunk and form an anterior division right here, and then form the lateral cord. Then this continues on and forms the median cord. So the posterior division of each trunk is going to form this posterior cord. Now the anterior division of the superior and middle trunk are going to form the lateral cord, because it's actually turned to the side. You can't really see that on this drawing right here. And then this guy is all by itself in its anterior division. I like this picture here. We can see the superior, middle, and inferior trunks are all giving rise to this posterior cord right there. And the posterior cord is going to go off the radial nerve. So see the radial nerve coming off right there? So I like this picture. We can see the inferior, middle, and superior trunks each have a division that goes to the posterior. And this posterior division becomes the radial nerve. Now there's this little thing that comes off and actually circles to the shoulder, but because it's coming off at the armpit, it's called the axillary nerve. That goes to the deltoid, sensory signals from the shoulder joint and skin of the shoulder. The radial nerve is going to actually go all the way down the radial side of the forearm. What a surprise. And it goes to the triceps, because it's on the back, and the wrist extensors. So the posterior cord right here becomes the radial nerve. Now the medial cord and the lateral cord, they're going to actually have a branch that comes together and form the median nerve. Now this is called the median nerve because it goes all the way down the median anterior surface right here, and it's going to go to the wrist and hand flexors. Now the ulnar nerve is going to come off the medial cord right here, and it's going to go on the ulnar side. See how it's going behind the elbow? That's your funny bone. And it goes to flexors. Now the muscle cutaneous nerve, can't forget about him. He's this little tiny thing coming off the lateral cord, and he just goes to the biceps brachii, brachialis, and the skin around this area. The roots of C8 and T1 are going to form the inferior trunk, and it has its own anterior division. It's going to form the medial cord, and the ulnar nerve comes off and goes to the flexors on the ulnar side. Now, the lateral cord and medial cord miss each other, so they're going to get together and form the median cord, which runs down the middle of the forearm, and it goes to the flexors on the radial side. For the online activities, you have to know the terminal nerves, what they do, and where they are. This is all on the lecture exam, so look at the study guide. Usually I have people draw it, but that will not be possible in an online format, so we will see what I will do instead.